Go ahead and take your packets out and open up to lesson 5. Originally, lesson 5 was not going to be a read aloud day, but because we did not finish yesterday, that's what we're going to work on. So we're going to connect yesterday section with today's section to talk about how characters fight through the war. So what I want to teach you and what I want to work on today is that readers of World War II stories see when life is ruined by war, they end up finding ways to survive. The characters end up finding ways to survive. And you're going to probably see both in Knight and your own stories that the ways that they choose to survive isn't always by being aggressive and fighting back. So, what I want you guys to do on your packet today is I want you to make 2 columns. So, I want you to list in one column, so maybe like a T chart. In one side, I want you to name it Ways to Survive. And in the other column, I just want you to write down other thoughts. And as I read to you today, I want you to continue to list things that you are noticing about how Ellie is choosing to survive. And I want you just to write down other thoughts that you're having. I'll probably pause as I'm reading to you and tell you my ideas out loud. And then you guys can go ahead and copy those down like we do on regular days. So I have 3 things from yesterday that I wrote down in my Ways to Survive column. And the first thing that I thought really stuck out to me and how Ellie chose to survive was one, he lies about his age. So when Dr. Mengele asked him his age, he said 18 instead of 15, so he lied. He took the advice from the inmate to hopefully survive. He also lied about his job. So instead of saying he was a student, he said he was a farmer, hoping that farmers would be seen as a little bit better of a person to do that work and to not get pushed off to the side. The last way that I've seen him survive so far, I think, is just by following orders. He hasn't resisted back. He was not that group of boys with knives trying to fight back. He has done everything asked of him. So he got off the car, he follows orders, he um, takes his clothes off and puts them in the pile like he's supposed to. He gets his hair cut at the barber. And so, really, him just following orders, I think, has led to a good part of his survival up to this point. So, go ahead and open up to page 36. I'm going to go ahead and read the next 10 pages to you today. We left off discussing how Ellie had really just given up hope for everything. He talks about how everyone's senses were numb. They no longer had that instinct to self preserve. They didn't have the instinct of defense, and they didn't have that instinct of pride. Around 5 o'clock in the morning, we were expelled from the barack. The coppels were beating us again, but I no longer felt the pain. A glacial wind was enveloping us. We were naked, holding our shoes and belts. In order, run! We ran. After a few minutes of running, a new barack. A barrel of foul-smelling liquid stood by the door. Disinfection. Everybody soaked in it. Then came a hot shower. All very fast. As we left the showers, we were chased outside and ordered to run some more. Another barack. The storeroom. Very long tables. Mountains of prison garb. As we ran, they threw the clothes at us. Pants, jackets, shirts. In a few seconds, we had ceased to be men. Had the situation not been so tragic, we might have laughed. We looked pretty strange. Mere Kratz, a colossus, wore a child's pants, and Stern, a skinny little fellow, was floundering in a huge jacket. We immediately started to switch. I glanced over at my father. How changed he looked. His eyes were veiled. I wanted to tell him something, but I didn't know what. The night had passed completely. The morning star shone in the sky. I, too, had become a different person. The student of Talmud, the child I was, had been consumed by the flames. All that was left was a shape that resembled me. My soul had been invaded and devoured by a black flame. So many events had taken place in just a few hours that I had completely lost all notion of time. When had we left our homes? And the ghetto? And the train? Only a week ago? One night? One single night? How long had we been standing in the freezing wind? 1 hour? A single hour? 60 minutes? Surely it was a dream. Not far from us, prisoners were at work. Some were digging holes, others were carrying sand. None as much as glanced at us. We were withered trees in the heart of the desert. Behind me, people were talking. I had no desire to listen to what they were saying, or to know who was speaking and what about. Nobody dared raise his voice, even though there was no guard around. We whispered, perhaps of the thick smoke that poisoned the air and stung the throat. So I think this might even be something small that I would write down on that ways to survive tab, is the fact that nobody dared raise their voice. So that fear that we talked about yesterday, that's kind of starting to invade his personality. Even though there's not a guard around, they know that they probably shouldn't be seen talking anyways. So I might just write down that they're whispering as a way to survive. We were herded into yet another barack. Inside the gypsy camp, we fell into ranks of 5. And now stop moving! There was no floor, a roof and 4 walls. Our feet sank into the mud. Again the waiting. I fell asleep standing up. I dreamed of a bed, of my mother's hand on my face. I woke. I was standing, my feet in the mud. Some people collapsed, sliding into the mud. Others shouted, "Are you crazy? We were told to stand. Do you want us to get it all in trouble?" As if all the troubles in the world were not already upon us. Little by little we sat down in the mud, but we had to get up whenever a capo came in to check if, by chance, somebody had had a new pair of shoes. If so, we had to hand them over. No use protesting. The blows multiplied, and, in the end, one still had to hand them over. I had new shoes myself, but as they were covered in a thick coat of mud, they had not been noticed. I thanked God, in an improvised prayer, for having created mud in his infinite and wondrous universe. Suddenly the silence became more oppressive. An SS officer had come in and, with him, the smell of the angel of death. We stared at his fleshy lips. He harangued us from the center of the barack. "You are in a concentration camp, in Auschwitz." A pause. He was observing the effect his words had produced. His face remains in my memory to this day. A tall man, in his 30s, crime written all over his forehead and his gaze. He looked at us as one would a pack of leprous dogs clinging to life. "Remember," he went on, "remember it always. Let it be graven in your memories. You are in Auschwitz, and Auschwitz is not a convalescent home. It is a concentration camp. Here you must work. If you do not, you will go straight to the chimney, to the crematorium. Work or crematorium, the choice is yours." We had already lived through a lot that night. We thought that nothing could frighten us more. But his harsh words sent shivers through us. The word chimney here was not an abstraction. It floated in the air, mingled with the smoke. It was perhaps the only word that had a real meaning in this place. He left the barack. The capos arrived, shouting, "All specialists, locksmiths, carpenters, electricians, watchmakers, one step forward." The rest of us were transferred to yet another barack. This one of stone. We had permission to sit down. A gypsy inmate was in charge. My father suddenly had a colic attack. He got up and asked politely in German, "Excuse me, could you tell me where the toilets are located?" The gypsy stared at him for a long time, from head to toe, as if he wished to ascertain that the person addressing him was actually a creature of flesh and bone, a human being with a body and a belly. Then, as if waking from a deep sleep, he slapped my father with such force that he fell down and crawled back to his place on all fours. I stood petrified. What had happened to me? My father had just been struck in front of me, and I had not even blinked. I had watched and kept silent. Only yesterday I would have dug my nails into this criminal's flesh. Had I changed that much? So fast? Remorse began to gnaw at me. All I could think was, I shall never forgive them for this. My father must have guessed my thoughts because he whispered in my ear, "It doesn't hurt." His cheek still bore the red mark of the hand. I'm going to stop again. I think we can add 2 different things at this point. So one, ways to survive, he kept quiet. He's obviously not proud of this because he's noticed his change. He wishes he probably could have fought back and dug his fingernails into that criminal's flesh, but he kept quiet. So I'm going to add that to my list. So again, following orders, keeping quiet. The other thought that I have, so I might add to the other side, has to do with his character. And I think that what we're seeing in that character, again, starts to reflect a little bit again from yesterday, is the fact that that fear is coming out. but he's choosing to deal with that fear by kind of keeping everything internal. So I might write